Ladies and gents, we have our upcoming Azerite armor improvements clarified by Blizz. They have announced what they're going to be doing with the Azerite armor and how they're trying to make it better. And this is kind of the overall issue with Azerite armor, is there are so many problems with it that affect every single corner of the WoW player base, from the super casual just bought the game all the way up to the mega hardcore. There's some aspect of Azerite armor that is an issue that needs to be fixed, and the Blizzard's got a mess on their hands trying to sort it out. And I think that's why generally Azerite armor is very divisive, and I mean that in terms of what people want improved is different across the board. If people who just don't like having low item level, that's it. They have like a generally higher item level, but they're stuck with these 340 pieces. They don't like that because it doesn't make sense to them logically. It's like, well, I'm 350 all the way across the board, but I've got this 340 item. So they want more accessibility to higher item level stuff instead of being stuck with this lower item level stuff. And this goes then all the way to the other end where it's like, I don't care about the item level at all. That's not of interest to me. What is of interest is the things you're asking me to chase and care about. And you're also adding this enforced rarity. An enforced rarity for an item that's not desirable, and you can't have one without the other. You can't have, for example, there may be some real problems somewhere in WoW's code that makes certain grey quality items not appear on trash. We would never know about it, although those items are extremely rare because we just don't care about them. And so when we look at traits that are basically passive bonuses and our characters are lighting up with fireworks and doing all kinds of stupid things, yet it does nothing to our gameplay, that causes us a lot of issues. And everything in between. There's a huge amount of issues with it. So we've had this post, which is describing what's going to happen. So we're going to read through this. Again, I'll put a timestamp in the description to skip past it if you've already read it and you want the critique of what has been said. So let's start off then. Thanks a lot for all the continued feedback and discussion around the Azerite armor system. We've been following the community discussions closely, and the systems team has been focusing on making some improvements as their top priority. I've got some updates to share on the current thoughts as well as some upcoming changes. To start, here are some of the bigger issues we've been seeing brought up. So this is not all the issues, this is the bigger ones they consider. Overall availability. While there's plenty of Azerite armor in the 295 to 340 item level range, further sources are heavily limited and susceptible to bad luck. Even players who are doing a wide range of high-end content are still wearing at least one item level 340, despite having replaced all of their other gear several times over. Everything else about the system is basically irrelevant if you can't get your hands on the gear in the first place. So, yes, this is correct. I personally have had 12 max level item caches from Mythic Plus. I have had 0 Azerite armor from there. My Azerite armor has come from raiding, and my druid was lucky enough to get some for doing the 4 Mythic 0 dungeons for the weekly quest. That's where my equipped Azerite armor has come from. The second point is lack of agency. Hello, Reddit. When items do drop, it can feel like you're not really given much in the way of options. You can choose whether you want this to be Fire or Frost Beast, or a versatile one with a generic trait, but that isn't necessarily an interesting choice. And when you look at the complete package, those choices don't often feel like they're having a meaningful impact on how you play your character. So this is a kind of obscure reference, and I'm very aware Blizzard is desperately trying to stay away from the fact that they don't want to admit their traits are boring. They don't want to come out and say they're really boring. They're terrible. Like, they have all these fancy names, but in essence, one does X DPS, the other does X DPS, and that's all you're picking between. But they're kind of hinting around it, skirting the issue, and just trying... I mean, the idea here, I just have to point this out, is that the generic trait is a versatile one isn't necessarily true. They're just flat out the best in a lot of cases, while choosing between these X, Y, Z choices of which one does more damage. They do reference, of course, though, that it doesn't feel like you have a buff at all. I can't tell whether I have this equipped or not. Trait depth. Several of the traits that I consider the best mathematically turn out to be some of the simplest mechanically, which is just said, which reinforces the sense that the system isn't really affecting gameplay. And this comes back down to this rarity issue again. A lot of these 3 main bullet points kind of tackle similar issues. You're trying to force players to believe that this is some sort of precious armor. By making it very difficult to obtain, completely RNG, literally removing it from loot tables from certain gearing sources, such as Mythic Plus, but not making it interesting to get in the first place. And it's impossible to care about the system. Okay, so those are the bigger issues they're talking about. We agree that those issues need to be resolved, so here's a few changes we're working on. So these are the improvements we're getting. We need to make Azerite armor more available for all types of players through a method everyone can utilize. So we're actually looking at emissary rewards for that. The plan is to make Azerite armor rewards from emissary quests scale all the way up to 370 based on your item level, which gives everyone a new reliable source for appropriate gear. Further on, we're looking at making some further improvements to the ways emissaries reward gear, but getting more Azerite armor in your hands is the highest priority for the immediate future. When we add new Azerite armor in what we're calling BFA Season 2, starting with Siege of Zuldazar and its corresponding Mythic Plus and PvP seasons, we're going to add another outer ring to those pieces of gear that has 2 spec-specific trait options for each spec. This effectively means that your favorite traits will be available in a lot more items, while also opening up a lot more options across the scope of all your Azerite pieces, and thus we hope create more interesting decisions. We're also going to continue to work on the individual traits themselves. We've done some basic tuning so far, but we're taking the lessons we've learned from these first iterations forward, and Tides of Vengeance will bring new traits into the pool that reflect that. Our goal is to make the more generic traits be decent middle-of-the-road options for when you want to use a single piece for multiple situations or specs, but make sure the spec-specific options, which are generally the more interesting traits, win out in their respective environments. Some of these changes won't be coming until Tides of Vengeance, and you'll see them on the PTR soon, but the overall availability of Azerite armor is a much more pressing concern, so we're investigating ways of hotfixing that directly into the live game. I don't have a solid timeline on what that might be yet, but we'll definitely have more information to share as soon as we can confirm when that can happen. Okay, that is the improvements. Let's talk about them. The first one is definitely something that was going to happen anyway, and that is the scaling up of the rewards in terms of item level. That's something that was on the cards forever. There was no way they were going to keep that exactly the same from the start of the game. The World Quest stuff generally does scale up with each new season. They're just moving the schedule forward on that. Now, I think that, as we talked about at the beginning, is a lot of people have lots of different issues with this. I think that's actually, in and of itself, is going to appease a huge amount of players. Because they'll just be able to bump their item level up. Of course, everybody's going to bump their item level up just that little bit, so it's not going to change anything like across the board. Everybody's in the same situation now. Will just simply be able to bump their item level up. It will be based on your item levels, so it's not like you're going to be capping and getting 370 Azerite armor. I do want to point out here, it is from the Emissary quests. That's not the world quests for Azerite armor. That's the Emissary reward you get at the end of the day. They do appear, say, once a week. I think is a reasonable assumption for how often you get an Azerite cache from an emissary reward, let's say once a week. So it's kind of doubled the chances if we put it with Mythic Plus, and you can include it with PvP, and now you can include maybe once a week emissary reward for that you do have this extra source, it's basically an extra loot box. That's it, and it's a very temporary fix as well, because it's going to bump everybody up. Most people are going to be hoping to get the shoulders, the head, or the chest. They did mention here, and I wonder if they're going to try and sort this out, is that they're looking at the way the emissaries reward gear. Does that mean that they're going to say, they're going to include something saying, well, you have this 340 chest while you have 385 head and shoulders. We should probably try and push the reward some way towards giving you a 370 chest, because giving you a 370 head every time this emissary reward pops up is completely and more frustrating, right? I still have this 340, like, it's not helping me in any way, shape, or form. So hopefully they are going to do something like that, because remember, it's still going to be World Quest stuff, so it's going to be the same Azerite armor you get from the emissary cache right now. It's just going to be the 370 version of the exact same thing you're getting now. Again, something that was always going to happen. They've just moved the schedule forward a bit to tide people over who are more concerned with the item level. That kind of solves the people who are just annoyed at having a 340 piece, and that's all they want. They don't really care about the traits, don't care about anything else. They just want that number to go up that's above the item level. So I think that'll solve that problem for them. In BFA Season 2 then, so this isn't the stuff that's immediate, this is going to come a bit later. It's exactly what we thought was going to happen, is adding another ring. Adding another ring is what was mentioned several times. This isn't unsurprising, it's not unexpected, but it is decent to see that it's coming now and what's going to be in there. Now, I say what's going to be in there because we do know what kind of stuff is going to be in there, and this is a positive thing. There are some very, very cool Azerite traits coming up. Now, we've only seen a few of them. They've been data mined on the PTR, which might have been what prompted this post in the first place, but they are things that you can feel. They are things that you can actually tangibly notice happening. So I'll give you some examples here from what we found on the PTR, or what other dudes have found on the PTR, I should say. So hunters have something like dire consequences, where kill command does some additional damage, but then it has a chance to summon a dire beast. Okay, I can do something with that. The monks are getting Dance of Shiji. Spending chi has a chance to make your next spinning crane kick free and deal additional damage, something to keep an eye on. Monks are getting Fury of Zuen. Your combo strikes grant you Fury of Zuen, giving your next Fist of Fury a 3% chance to grant, it is a chance again, to grant 130 haste and invoke Zuen the White Tiger. This does stack up to 33 times, making it pretty much guaranteed. Good. Okay. That's something I can keep a track on. That's very similar to Legion Legendaries. We've seen abilities like this before, but it is something to be tangibly used. Rogues getting nothing personal. Vendetta grants you 50 energy. Okay, I need to be aware I'm going to get this big chunk of energy, and causes your mutilate attacks to deal an additional amount of damage. So now I get to just manage my energy that little bit better. Shaman, Tectonic Thunder, Earthquake, has a 25% chance, which is pretty decent, to make your next Chain Lightning be instant cast. That will be nice. That will be something to track on. That will be something to keep an eye on. Will it change our rotation that much? No, but it is something cool. We get that instant cast, that burst. That's something to keep an eye on. And your Demonic Tyrants, for the Warlocks, Demonic Tyrants Demon Fire deals additional damage, and summoning your Demonic Tyrant instantly generates 5 Soul Shards. Again, some sort of resource management to go along with having this trait. This is better. This is much, much better. This is stuff that I have to be aware I have and consciously choose and utilize in some way across the board. We also have a cool one for the Death Knights called Hell Chains. Dark Transformation, this is for Unholy obviously, links you and your pet with chains that deal fire damage every second to enemies between you and it for 5 seconds. Okay, I have to be aware of where my pet is and position myself in such a way that my Hell Chains will travel through this target. Potentially some nice AoE burst there. I send my pet out into a big pack, I move to the other side of my pet, I get my Hell Chains going with Dark Transformation, and I get this nice big cluster of AoE going with this maybe cool special effect, visual effect going on in the meantime. Something I need to be aware of, something tangible, something I need to know that I have, and something that I can utilize properly and maximize and do something with. This is much better. This is much, much better. So, to confirm how this is going to work, there'll be a new outer ring. They're calling it the Tier 4 Azerite armor. So, this looks like it's actually going to be the first ring you choose from. Now, I want to be clear here. It does look like exactly what we predicted is they're kind of writing off the current rings. Yeah, they've made them as generic as possible. Maybe. And they're just going to kind of even them out so it doesn't really matter too much. And the actual ring will care about it. I know for anybody who's been watching my recent videos, this is exactly what you said would happen. I know, but it was definitely the way things were going. It wasn't anything more than, well, it's clearly this is what they're going to do, is kind of write those rings off and declare the outer ring, the new traits, to be the ones that you should be interested in. But what you are going to get is a choice of 2. So for a Death Knight, for example, you will have 2 Blood traits, 2 Unholy traits, and 2 Frost traits. So you will have to physically choose which one you prefer, which one suits your playstyle. Hopefully, it doesn't come back down to just which one does X more damage. Now, based on what we've seen so far with the data mined Azerite traits, it doesn't look like that will be a case. Right? It looks like you will be building, say, for the Shamans who are doing Earthquake and Instant Cast Chain Lightning, that will be something you want to build for AoE. It's not going to help you that much single target, in theory. We'll see the math on that. And similar to granting Fury of Zuen or getting a buff to spinning crane kicks. One gives more AoE damage. The other one gives us this single target burst that we can reliably do something with. So this is something that we maybe get a choice of. Will the choices come down to one's an AoE one, one's a single target one? We'll have to wait and see what more traits come. I do carry some pessimism with this. But it's looking okay. It's looking all right. This is a good start, and this is something I actually am okay with. I'm totally fine with this. They then go on to the third point. We're going to continue to work on individual traits themselves. So I just mentioned then they've made them, they're kind of writing off the other two rings. But they seemingly are going to invoke common sense, because they're probably going to nerf the shit out of the generic traits. That's the simple situation we seem to be in. The likelihood is your generic boring traits, your Thunderous Blast and so on and so forth, are going to be nerfed pretty heavily. They are now intentionally saying they're not supposed to be as good as the class-specific ones, because they shouldn't be, which is something we were talking about a long time ago, as to why something that's universal across all three specs is the better than the one that ties me and locks me into a single spec. That makes no sense. Does this solve everything? No, obviously not. It doesn't solve much of anything. I think going forward, we have to assume it's screwed, but they're going to do the best with it. Does this change the having to regrind the Azerite traits? That's going to depend on how high they bump up the AP requirements of the next tier of armor. At this point, if you want to be in a good mindset, like mentally with the game and Azerite armor, you kind of have to say it was fucked all the way for a first patch. Going forward, can it be better? And if it can be better, and it looks like it can be better, then that's what we've got, and that's what we're going to deal with. If they go the route of, well, we really want to bump up AP levels because people have been farming loads. We know there are people who've hit like level 30 Azerite neck or whatever, something ridiculous, by spamming islands all day. That's not reflective of the player base. And it's not that fun. I don't want to keep regrinding the same traits over and over again. A lot of people have a huge problem with that, including myself. And to keep it relatively low, I think would be fine, but it would nullify the other system. We'll have to see how far they go with that. It's going to be very interesting to see what they decide the AP levels should be on the new Azerite armor, the Season 2 Azerite armor. What AP levels are they going to be requiring? Because if they're suddenly way high, like it's level 33 to get the first one, a lot of people are going to go, well, piss on you. Or will they punish sort of the mythic style of play, the higher level guys, and say, well, you are the nerds, so you need to grind way more AP. And it's like, well, I don't really want to. That's not that fun. We'll have to see how that plays out. That should be a lot of fun. But they are hitting a lot of bigger issues. They've done a good job here. They have done a good job here. There's definite bonuses. I think it's a right decision to essentially just write off the other rings and say, yeah, kind of fuck those other rings, but here's the interesting stuff. The interesting stuff is going to be the first stuff you access. It's going to be stuff that affects your gameplay, affects your character, some sort of character progression. I personally am looking forward to seeing what the choices are that I get with my character. Will they be on par with kind of legendary effects? Will they be like golden Azerite artifact traits? I don't know yet, but these look decent enough. These look like a good start. I can see myself with each of the characters that have had their Ring 4 Azerite powers data mined doing something with those and being able to utilize them in some way. I can already sort of predict how the feel's going to be, and that's a good thing. That's okay in my book. I think they've done all right there. And I don't think they had much of a choice. Sure, we can live forever saying, hey, this is doomed from the start. You're right. It was doomed from the start. In terms of the availability then, a big point of contention has been the lack of availability from Mythic Plus, because it no longer made sense within the current version of the game. Once we realized that we had been misled, and we had been misled about what was going to be happening with the Mythic Plus cache, and realizing that simply gaining Azerite armor is a massive problem in the game right now. Why is it not available in Mythic Plus? Because given the way the game is, it makes no sense anymore. Why it's not available in Mythic Plus? You're not going to allow us to reasonably get it from a Mythic Plus cache. I can't get it from the PvP cache. I'm reliant on raiding or just pure, complete random luck to get something to put in that slot. Why is it no longer available from Mythic Plus? Because the system doesn't make sense anymore. I agree with you in the current state of the game. It doesn't make much sense. I would say that based on what they've said, I don't agree with this, by the way, but based on what they've said, which keeps referring to this grand scheme, and I'm not trying to harp on a meme here, I'm just trying to say this is what they've been saying. The likelihood is they don't want that to happen because they probably want to add something very cool and very powerful at the end of the expansion, which is historically what they always do, and the Azerite armor is where that's going to appear, and they really do not want people to get it quickly. Now, that does mean that they have opted for a system which is shitty for a long time, assuming I'm correct. shitty for a long time, but has some sort of payoff. Like a terrible movie, but the ending was kind of cool. That's the approach they're taking here. That feels like the only logical reason why they do not want you to have regular access to decent Azerite armor. And that's because later down the line, it's going to be a problem. And they don't want that to be a problem. Because you know they've talked about it a lot. They've mentioned openly they've talked about it a lot. Why is it not available in Mythic Plus? And the simple fact is, if we do that now, that really fucks us up in the future. Because we want to have this payoff eventually. And it's better if we keep it down to this Casino Royale. We could be a bit more pessimistic and say they want it down to the Casino purely in terms of playtime. I don't think that's the case, given how frustrated people are with this system. I think it's more a case of they've probably got something of a legendary quality thing, something along those lines that comes up at the end of the expansion, and they don't want they don't want all the raiders, or they don't want all the players who are heavy Mythic Pluses to just go straight in on week 1 on that reset day. Hey, we've added this new mega trait to Azerite armor. Okay, cool. I'm just going to grind out 15s or 10s hardcore for the next 12 hours. I've got everything already. They probably don't want that. They want people to work towards some payoff. Do I like that system? As I said, no, I do not. No, I do not like that idea, but it's the only idea that makes sense to me. There we have it, folks. So just to clarify for anybody who was a little lost in all that, is in the very short term, they're going to hotfix it so you can get 370 stuff from the Emissary Rewards. Not from World Quest, from Emissary Rewards. When the Azerite Cash Emissary Reward pops up, hopefully we'll have some sort of intuition as to whether or not you have 2 mega pieces and 1 really bad piece, so it won't just kind of keep spamming you with that, because again, opening that box is subject to RNG in and of itself, which is not that fun. I'm skeptical, but I would hope that they have something like that. There's some wording here that suggests that might be the case. That should solve a lot of issues there. And also, the new Azerite traits are coming with the new raid. They are not coming into the hotfix, the new Ring 4, which does seemingly have some reasonably interesting choices in there. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.